Before we get started, I just want to make something known to everybody. It is an absolute joy to do what I do for all of you. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Holster. Thank you to all my mods. Thank you to all my members. Thank you, everybody who's contributed to the pretty much this entire channel. I greatly appreciate all that you have done for me throughout these years. I know I say this all the time, but I really do appreciate you. And this channel would not be where it is today if it wasn't for your support, really. So I just want to say thank you before we get started. But let's begin, shall we? Yo, peoples! Kyushu92 here, and welcome back to yet another My Hero Academia chapter reaction and review. The family's not going out to eat. That means I get to take my time with these chapters. Now, mind you, my family, Kenneth Moore, hey, hi, how are you? If this is your first time here, hope you enjoy yourself and my voices and dramatic reading if this is your first time here. But, family's not going out anywhere, so I can enjoy myself with these two chapters. Remember, One Piece doesn't have a chapter today because it is on break, but My Hero and Jujutsu have chapters today. And in between My Hero and Jujutsu, my family's already bringing me food, so I gotta do this reaction for My Hero, still taking my time. Snow, it's good to see you as well. Taking my time with this chapter, Taking my time with this chapter, then in between, I'm going to eat, and then afterwards we can continue with Jujutsu, taking my time with that. So last we left off in the story of My Hero Academia is all of the heroes work together, all the ones who are able to fight, work together to stave off the attacks of All for One, who was just lashing out and trying to take out everyone, still mulling over the fact that all of these heroes have come together in order to stand against him, which is still a concept that is so foreign to him. A person who's been alive for over a century, since the emergence of quirks, really, still cannot fathom the idea that all these individuals he sees as nothing but insects, nothing but peons, background characters, if you will, pure trash, still seek to stand against him because in his mind, he simply thinks that I'm simply too powerful for all of them, so why don't they just give up? And yet all of these heroes, despite the injuries that they suffered throughout this entire war, still stand against him. Beaten, tired, hurting, and they still stand against him to protect Midoriya, where Midoriya is being told by everyone, you can do it, and then the last person to say you can do it is Inko Midoriya, who says that in accordance with everyone else saying you can do it, Midoriya, and the last we see is just one big massive panel of Midoriya basically punching through the darkness that is enveloping All for One. I still can't tell if that was like a metaphorical representation of the darkness that is All for One, with Midoriya punching through it, with just the light showing on that panel being from his fist, hitting All for One directly in the chest. Now the question is, where do we go from here after this chapter? So, let's get started with chapter 423, One for All versus All for One. And it begins with Midoriya punching All for One directly, solidly, wholeheartedly in his chest. Mind you, this is also All for One where he's basically morphed all of his quirks together to be more refined and turned into like this giant amalgamation of quirks. Even more, I dare say even more monstrous looking than when his original body tried to use all of his quirks at once in order to speed towards Midoriya before he was promptly bodied by Bakugo. So Midoriya hits All for One, and it causes this monstrous tower of writhing quirks to topple over, while Midoriya's fist is steadily getting embedded in his chest, with All for One going, "How did I not realize? I should have noticed that Hyper Regen wasn't working on this haggard excuse for a body. Something should have felt off. He's to blame. No, all of them, they conspired. Each individual only represents a feeble threat, but as a united force, they somehow overwhelmed me, dulling my sensitivity without me realizing. When the boy drove Yoichi and the successors into the core, it wasn't only my spirit that was a lost cause, but this body as well." And remember, since Midoriya's memories have integrated with Shigaraki's memories, the memories of All Might way back when Midoriya was first learning how to train to use One For All, when All Might says, "Your limp noodle body isn't ready for it. Your limbs would pop right off." And then Midoriya goes, "After just 2 years, it's a little stronger than what the 8th could deliver. You're facing the combined power of all 9 of us!" And this is Midoriya as his punch proceeds to start to break apart All For One / Shigaraki's body. "Yes, this body too was already shattered." And it shows this impact as it's like this giant hill of quirks that are just laying over the entire landscape. Multiple heroes and heroes in training are all over the entire landscape, and the light is just flashing. The light is just flashing from when Midoriya hit him, because that one dude whose name escapes me, he's from Shiketsu. Or yeah, I think he's from Shiketsu. He's the dude that can create like what is it? No, I'm trying to remember what this dude can do. Can he create mud on the ground? I forget him. I forget what this dude's particular quirk can do. But he's the one that had like the straps over, and he just had a bare chest, and he had the black hair. But he goes, "His quirks are crumbling away," and Kirishima goes, "Midoriya must have pulled it off," as it shows All For One's body crumbling. Like, literally crumbling from the impact. His body's breaking apart. Shigaraki's body is breaking apart. But All For One goes, "I'm not done yet!" as he's holding his body together with his quirks. His body is literally breaking apart at the seams, literally falling away in pieces. And yet he causes his quirks to stitch his body back together and hold it together. That's where All For One is at right now. Haphazardly using his quirks to hold his body together. I haven't achieved anything yet. No one can rob me of what's mine. Only my dream gets to come true. I won't pay it forward. Nobody gets to pick up my torch. The Demon Lord is singular and absolute. I said this many times. Apologies if I'm interrupting the dialogue, but I said this many times. All For One was at his best when he was calm. When he was calm, collected, and completely reserved. Now, All For One sees himself in a state where he could possibly lose, and now he's thrown his calm demeanor out the window. Even worse, this is even worse than when he started rewinding into a child and his emotional inhibitions started to get lesser and lesser. Or started to get stronger and stronger. His control over his emotions started to get stronger and stronger. This is worse, because this is All For One, who simply cannot fathom the idea that he could possibly lose in this fight. I need only repeat this process. Oh wait, I need only repeat this process, just as I did with that fool Tomura. This boy is suitable. Now that he's without One For All, anyone will do, really. I'll grant them my quirk, and me with it to claim a new vessel! Because he's looking at Midoriya. Tomura to him is a lost cause. But he sees Midoriya, who is more than enough of a new vessel that he could use. He just needs to implant his quirk and his consciousness into Midoriya in an attempt to take over his body. And then the whole cycle will just repeat again. However, Midoriya, with his fist clench, blood spewing out of the creases of his fingers, goes, "You're done, All For One!" And then Aizawa goes, "Midoriya!" And then Kurogiri, whose head kind of dissipated in the last chapter, his head starts to show up once more as Present Mic goes, "Shirakumo?" And then through the head of Kurogiri, we see the eye of Shirakumo as Midoriya is launching towards All For One. And then it has Shirakumo going, "Shota Yamada, sorry." As Kurogiri warps himself. He warps himself. And then we get a memory of Kurogiri when he was, serving Tomura. And then we have the words, "I must do this. I must protect Tomura Shigaraki." And while Midoriya's trying to punch All For One, the Kurogiri side makes a warp gate that causes Midoriya's fist to go into it and avoid All For One altogether. This was the punch meant to end everything, and Kurogiri took over the body once again! And yeah, his fist just goes right into the warp gate, missing All For One completely. Then Present Mike goes, "Give me a break! I should have known. In the end, he's always gonna reach out with a helping hand." And Present Mike says this, but he has tears in his eyes. And then we have Kurogiri going, "All For One. Give back Tomura Shigaraki." And then it shows Kurogiri's warp gate as it's starting to, I want to say starting to fade. And then as it shows Spinner, putting the hand of Shigaraki directly in front of his face, we have Midoriya, who still isn't stopping. And then Shirakumo comes back and he says, "His friends await him." And then Bakugo comes out of nowhere and blows up the warp gate of Kurogiri. Where'd he come from? Huh? Somebody tell me, where Bakugo come from? Where'd he come from? He just came out of nowhere and just blows up Kurogiri's warp gate. And Present Mike goes, "Bakugo? You're kidding me. That kid's supposed to be in the hospital. He zoomed back here all alone with his blasts?" And Bakugo is just right there. And then we get Shoto. Who created, apparently created a ski jump for Bakugo to get up there. With Bakugo going, "Todoroki might have helped out with this little ski jump, but don't you dare let me surpass you, Izuku!" She really shows how far Bakugo has gone when he's not calling him Deku, but he's calling him by his name. And then it shows Midoriya's directly in front of All For One. "All For One, I can't look past what you've done, but you're not some monster beyond all understanding. No, stop. And you're no demon lord. Don't look at me. All you are is a lonely man!" And it shows Midoriya as his punch is connecting with the hand of All For One, but the punch is destroying the entire arm. And then it cuts to All For One as he's standing in this void. And it's just All For One by himself. "Yoichi, Midoriya managed to adjust that violent transfer in just such a way that the barest fragment would remain intact." Oh wait, no, this fragment is Yoichi. "Yoichi, Midoriya managed to adjust that violent transfer in just such a way that the barest fragment would remain intact. Then the resonance with his ember awakened me to do right by these last shreds of me, also that he could complete One For All, as we were meant to be." "I don't care! None of that matters! Don't fade away! Show me your face!" "Impossible. My time is up." "You can't go! You're mine! Look upon me! Let me see your eyes!" "Brother, I couldn't guide you down the right path. What Midoriya conceived for us here is our final salvation at the end of it all." "No! I won't allow it! I love you! I love you like no other! I'm hopeless without you! I'm nothing!" "It's time to pay the price for exploiting all for yourself. Because he awakened more than just me." And it shows every person It shows all the previous users of One for All as they're coming up right behind All for One in this mindscape. And mind you, this is All for One when he was a kid. And all the previous users of One for All, they then join with Midoriya and they punch one side of where All for One is, while Midoriya punches the other side. And in this group, along with the previous users, is Shigaraki himself. It's Shigaraki. He's joining with the previous users of One for All to destroy All for One. And it shows Shigaraki's hand hitting Midoriya's hand. Hold on. Give me a sec. This is a good chapter. This is 100 out of 10 right now. Give me a sec. Okay, I'm back. I just had to put my food on my table over there because I'm not eating in front of here. But Shigaraki, along with the users of One for All, destroy All for One along with Midoriya in this mindscape. And then we see Midoriya's bloody fist touching the hand of what seems to be the disintegrating hand of Shigaraki. And then we get Shigaraki's thoughts. I thought I was annihilated beyond hope when Master swallowed me up. But you somehow kept me tethered, kept me from fading. Right, Grandma? Kurogiri, I stole my body back from Master, but I never managed to destroy a thing. And he's speaking with Midoriya. In the end, maybe I really am just a crying little kid like you said. I couldn't even destroy your hands. And this is Midoriya and Shigaraki talking to each other while their fists are still touching. Everything you did, I couldn't let it stand. That's why I fought. I wanted to stop you. I wanted you to stop yourself, to keep that grief and misery from spreading any further. Izuku Midoriya, if Spinner survived this, tell him that even to the bitter end, Tomura Shigaraki kept fighting to destroy. And then Midoriya just says, it's already been destroyed. As the aftermath of Midoriya's punch reveals that Shigaraki, his whole body, All for One, One for All, have been shattered and destroyed into pieces as the fight is over. And the sky is split open, showing that the darkness of this war is over. The darkness of this war is now dissipating. The light of the heroes have won. It's over. It's done. All for One is no more. One for All is no more. Shigaraki perished along with everything. The fight's over. To be continued. It's over. Is Kurogiri dead too? I'm under that impression that he perished when Bakugo blasted his warp gate, in order for Midoriya to land that final hit on All for One. The war is over. We're done. Now, the story isn't over. I'm pretty sure we're going to get an epilogue now, but it's done. It's done. The heroes won. This isn't a situation where the villains are going to come back with a comeback even stronger than before. It's done. The threat of All for One is gone. Shigaraki is gone. One for All is gone. A century of All for One ruling and basically ruling over Japan with I wouldn't say an iron fist, but always that lurking shadow over the entirety of Japan. With power so great that even other nations were scared of him. There really is no reason for the President of the United States to send those heroes because the fighting's over already. It's over. I can't believe it. See, I've talked about this. I even made a video about what we're going to do when My Hero Academia ends. And now, the ending of My Hero Academia is even closer than what I thought. I didn't think we were going to see the end of this fight with this chapter. I didn't think we were... Sorry, I was talking to family. I didn't think we were going to see the end of this fight against All for One today. I didn't think. But now, see, when you see war happen in anime and manga, when you see the end of war happen, you wonder, did you ever think you would see the end of the war happen, period? I mean, you think about it all the time. You think about what's going to happen. And then what happens... From what I understand, Shigaraki is dead, Toga and maybe Dabi are most likely dead, Kurogiri is dead, almost all the original League members have perished, save for Mr. Compress and Spinner. Because Spinner, his body pretty much gave out after he had that massive temporary steroid boost of a quirk injected into him by All for One, and that's the last we saw of him. Shoji saw to that situation, but... Wow. How does one even respond to this event where we see the end of One for All? We see the end of One for All, we see the end of All for One, Shigaraki and Midoriya giving that last punch towards the sky. Now, mind you, he's not standing up. He's not standing up like All Might did during his final fight with All for One, which was way back earlier on. Not his final fight when he didn't have any quirks, but using the last vestige of One for All against All for One, where he stood up with his fist raised. This isn't that same situation, but it still ends with a fist raised. Oh my goodness. Did we ever think that We've been following this story. This story has been going on for like almost 10 years. Like I said in my video, it's gonna be 10 years if July 14th happens. But like I said that this story is probably not going to reach July. I said it. And now we have the final boss, the final obstacle towards peace. Destroyed. There is nothing else to contend with except rebuilding. I can't even be loud here. This is such an amazing victory, but at the same time, it's like this pretty much signifies we are nearing the end of My Hero Academia. So it kind of feels bittersweet because even though the heroes have won, it means the story is going to end soon. We're now closer to the ending of this story. Compress lost his limbs, yep. And I can see Spinner having some sort of brain damage from the quirks injected into him by All for One. I could see that happening as well. Let me do this. I wonder if they have like the whole synopsis read out. I want to see if they got it. I want to see. Yes. Excellent. Yes. Excellent. Okay, so I'm going to read out the entire synopsis that they got written up here. All for One reacts hard to Deku's point-blank attack, wondering why he didn't realize that super regeneration wasn't working on the body and that something should have felt off, eventually figuring out that they all conspired. Each individual only represents a feeble threat, but as a united force, they somehow dulled his sensitivity without him realizing. He further realizes that when Deku drove Yoichi and the others into the core, it wasn't only his spirit that was a lost cause, but the body as well. Deku thinks back to his training with All Might to first inherit One for All, and declares that after 2 years the powers have become stronger than the 8th, and he's now facing the combined power of all 9 of them. Because in the previous fights, All for One has only ever faced off against previous users of One for All who were using their own quirks, and just the superhuman aspect of One for All. They never accessed any of the other quirks. None of them. Midoriya was the first person to access every quirk of every previous user, being the first person to do so. So All for One is not used to that. As a result of all the damage, the body begins to shatter apart, with Gran noting, that's his name. Gran. Yo Shindo. That's Shindo. Thank you for that. Also, whoever said it, he was the guy that creates who is the guy that creates his quirk is Vibrate. Thank you, Halster. Thank you for that. It's so crazy that Deku's... let me see what you guys have said. It's so crazy that Deku started quirkless and now he beat the strongest villain in Japan with only the last embers of One for All before being quirkless again at the end of this chapter. Tomtastic, isn't it amazing how the most powerful villain in all of Japan, that even the rest of the world feared, was beaten by a person who wasn't even at 100% of their power? Remember how Midoriya was saying that All Might punching Nobu, it's not like these are not just random punches. These are 110% of his power. This isn't even Midoriya at 100%, but the combined might of not just himself, not just himself, but literally the help of all of his friends, all of his fellow students, all of his mentors and teachers, every hero that have strived and survived this long. Their combined might, along with the previous users of One for All and Shigaraki added in, fully destroy the last of All for One, and in the process Shigaraki as well, ending his threat forever. The most powerful villain that the world has ever seen, and he was beaten by someone who literally had no quirk left. The most powerful quirk user, okay? His power is up there with One for All and Star and Stripes' New Order. But this dude lost to someone who didn't even have any power left. Midoriya put his back into it. It's amazing. Deku during that war was pretty much the #1 hero, at least symbolically, as he was the only one who could fight Shigaraki. He probably wouldn't be able to be the #1 at all now. Sorry, not fight. I meant more like the only to be able to do frequent, significant damage to Shigaraki. It's crazy what we've seen. How many chapters do you think the epilogue will be? Do you think it'll be one massive epilogue chapter, or do you think we get like 5 chapters dedicated to the epilogue? I don't know. I don't know. We didn't lose All Might either. Yeah, that's the thing. When All for One, and I still need to read through this synopsis, because I like talking about My Hero Academia with all of you. I really do. It's such a wonderful piece to just talk about and conversate with. So I encourage you guys. Let's talk about it. But it's amazing how a lot of us thought. Now, me, I said, let's just wait and see what happens. And y'all asked me over the years, do you think All Might is going to die? Do you think it's going to be another situation where the teacher dies in order to spur on the student? And I brought this whole topic up. I can't remember the exact stream where it was, but I brought this up saying, like, y'all really should not think that just because that's a trope that it's going to happen here. And I was right. All Might is still alive, heavily injured, mind you, but he's still alive. Even when All For One in his younger body tried to literally rip him in half in front of everyone in public television just to spur away any ideas of hope ever coming to the people of Japan, or literally the entire world, Bakugo came in, saved him, and then bodied the original All For One. And now we have Midoriya taking care of All For One here, and the threat he posed with Shigaraki's body, and also bringing Shigaraki peace. No longer having him be this young child who was literally sired by All For One's suggestion, which is still incredibly messed up. You were literally conceived under the guidance of All For One, just so that you could become his new vessel. Now that's gone. Shigaraki is officially at peace. It's just amazing. The post-war chapters are going to be emotional. They are going to be, because it's going to be the last chapters we get of My Hero. We could be seeing the end of My Hero in June. I don't know if Horikoshi is going to end it with the next chapter. I highly doubt that he will, but I feel like June is going to be the last we see of My Hero Academia. Can y'all believe it? Man, let me get back to the synopsis. Let me continue reading. As a result of all the damage, the body begins to shatter apart, with Gran noting that his quirks are crumbling away, and Red Riot wonders if Deku pulled it off. But before he vanishes, All For One uses his quirks to forcibly hold his body together, declaring he hasn't achieved anything yet. And due to me, with my voice, I was screaming out just how desperate All For One was to remain there, literally holding his entire body together with just rage and sheer force of will. Kind of like that, what is his name? Darth Bane? Which Sith is it there's a Sith in Star Wars. I forget his exact name. It's not Nihilus, because I know who that is. But I think it's Darth Bane, who's essentially a Sith that held his entire decomposing, crumbling body together just with force of will and the dark side of the Force. This is essentially All For One doing that with rage and all of his quirks in order to keep himself together, even though his body is far beyond repair. You can tell that all of his quirks are failing him, because when super regeneration isn't working and you got to use other quirks in order to keep yourself together, it's a lost cause. So going back to this, All For One uses his quirks to forcefully hold his body together, declaring he hasn't achieved anything yet, and no one can rob him of what's his, angrily stating that only his dream gets to come true, and that nobody gets to pick up the torch. The Demon Lord is singular and absolute. Last bit of vocal throws out into the open, because you can see the end in sight, and you're doing your best to try and demoralize everyone around you, and trying your best to fool yourself into thinking like, I can turn this around, I can make this work, I'm going to succeed. Desperation at its finest. A person who never seemed like they were desperate for their plans to succeed until this one particular moment is now in a state where he is desperate to hold on in order to achieve his goals, even when there is absolutely no way for him to succeed anymore. Desperation at its finest, like I said. All for One, 150 got killed by a 16-year-old with no quirk. Just the last bit of embers for One For All. Did I call him One For All, or did I say All For One? I'm sorry, I meant to say All For One. My apologies. But you guys understand what I'm meaning. Let me see. He thinks about how he just needs to repeat the process like he did with Tomura and just transfer All For One to Deku or anyone to let him claim their body. All for One shouts for a new vessel, and Deku shouts that he's done as he charges for another punch. Eraserhead calls out to Deku when suddenly he sees Kurogiri start to move once again. He apologizes to Eraser and Present Mike, saying that he has to go and protect Tomura, warping himself right in between the hero and villain. Present Mike yells out annoyed that he knew in the end he was always going to reach out with a helping hand. Kurogiri asks All for One to give back Tomura and that his friends await him. You know, Dabi, Toga, Spinner. Every one of his friends are waiting for him, even though, for the most part, all of them are either dead or heavily injured to the point where they'll no longer be a threat to anyone, period. Suddenly, Dynamite appears and shoots an explosion out of his mouth right at Kurogiri. Excuse me, Bakugo shot an explosion out of his mouth? He did. He did. Wow, I was wondering why that explosion was happening in front of Bakugo's face. He literally expelled an explosion out of his mouth. That's amazing, because both of Bakugo's arms are pretty much broken. One of them which heavily mangled from his last fight, and the other one's out of commission. But he shoots an explosion out of his mouth. Wow, how did I not notice that? Let me see. Shoots an explosion out of his mouth right at Kurogiri, dissipating him. Now, it says dissipate, but it doesn't mean that he's technically dead. So maybe status unknown? Present Mike shouts in confusion that he was supposed to be at the hospital and blasted all the way here on his own. Dynamite says he got some help from one of Shoto's ice ramps before telling Deku not to let him surpass him. As Deku is about to attack, he tells All for One he can't look past what he's done, but knows he's not some monster beyond all understanding, that he isn't a demon lord, but just a lonely man. All for One shouts for him to stop and not look at him as Deku unleashes one final punch into his arm. In the Vestige Realm, All for One sees the remaining embers of Yoichi, who says Deku managed to adjust the violent transfer in such a way that the barest fragment would remain intact, which was able to resonate with the embers still within him, all to do right by his last shreds, so that he could complete One for All as they were meant to be. All for One maniacally says it doesn't matter, wanting him not to fade away and to show his face. But Yoichi says it's impossible since his time is up. Yoichi, All for One's face returns as he further panics, telling Yoichi that he's his, and to let him see his eyes. Yoichi laments that he couldn't guide him down the right path, and what Deku conceded for them here was their final salvation at the end of it all. All for One shouts that he won't allow it, and that he loves him, and that he's hopeless and nothing without him. But Yoichi simply says it's time for him to pay the price for exploiting all for himself. He concludes by revealing that Deku awakened more than just him, as from the void, Tomura and the One for All users emerge, as they all land one last hit to All for One, destroying him for good. As Deku and Tomura touch fists, Tomura begins to think about how he thought he was annihilated beyond hope when his master swallowed him up. But Nana somehow kept him tethered from fading. So his grandmother really came back for her grandson. She couldn't come back to her son, but she came back for her grandson. That's a whole circle for Nana Shimura just fully realized there. She couldn't come back for her son, which prompted her son to be the horrible father that he was, All for One's machinations. But she came back for her grandson. You gotta love those family ties. He then thinks about Kurogiri and about how he stole his body back, but never managed to destroy a thing. He says to Deku that in the end he was just a crying little kid, as he couldn't even destroy his hands. Deku responds that everything he did, he couldn't let stand, which is why he fought. He wanted to stop him, and wanted him to stop himself, to keep that grief and misery from spreading any further. Tomura laughs and tells Deku that if Spinner survived, tell him that even to the bitter end, Tomura Shigaraki kept fighting to destroy, as Deku replies that it's already been destroyed. The sky finally clears up, as Tomura's body disintegrates into ash. Wow. All for One trying to go against every One for All user and got killed by a 16-year-old kid tells you something. Yeah, he was too sure of himself. Another translation I saw for Deku's last line is, "You destroyed what you really needed to." That sounds nice too. It does. He shot the explosion out of his mouth so he could use his remaining hand to push Deku forward. I saw his hand. His hand is right behind Midoriya's back, edging, pushing him forward. It feels weird seeing All for One say the words "I love you," even though we know it's in a twisted way, but it still feels weird reading him say that. I know it's weird, because the man has lost everything, and he's so desperate to gain back what he sees as his, which, at the beginning of it all, was his brother. And he can't even get that now. So what happens now to all the quirks that were stolen? They're gone. They're not just going to go back into the people that they belong to. Because I'm pretty sure a lot of people whose quirks he's stolen, they're probably all dead and gone, because he's gathered quirks from over an entire century. Entire century, century and a half, if you will. So those quirks, gone. The All for One quirk, gone. One for All, gone. Spear-like limbs. The very first quirk that we see in this series, which he stole from his mother, gone. Every quirk he has ever had, gone. Permanently. Never to return to basically anyone, for the most part. To be fair, Kurogiri is already technically dead. It's just be killing the animated corpse. But for the most part. For the most part, yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, sorry if I've taken up so much of your time, but I just like to analyze these chapters. Which is why these chapters are never short. The only exception was last week when I had to really leave in order to go out and eat. Go out and eat with my family. Right, so that leaves Hawk's quirkless then. Yeah, those quirks, I mean, they don't just... I heard people didn't like how this chapter ended and they can't open that, and they can't open that All for One Shiggy is dead. Oh, people can't believe it? Or they don't want them to be dead? I think this is a worthwhile conclusion. There was no way for this to end peacefully and for the world to move forward in peace unless All for One was gone. It's unfortunate that Shigaraki had to pay the price for his own master's machinations. But I honestly don't think there was any other way. This was a good way to end this fight. A whole war that has claimed countless lives. Over a full century. They can't believe it? They're gonna have to. It's real. All for One and Shigaraki are gone. Turned into atoms. They're just gone now. It's over. You're not coming back from this. This isn't a dream. This isn't a fanfic. All for One and Shigaraki are gone. The sooner people who can't believe it come to terms with that, the easier the transition into acceptance. But this is where we're at, ladies and gentlemen. I can't say anything else. I can't, because then I'm going to feel like I'm droning on, and I don't want to keep you here any longer than I already have. It's been an honor and a privilege to read this chapter to you, but there's nothing else that needs to be said. I'm happy with this as an end for Shigaraki. I'm just sad that he never got to speak to the League. The last thing Shigaraki said to his people, I can't really remember. Maybe he left some part of himself with Deku in that fist bump. I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of hope. I feel like there's a lot of hope of Shigaraki still sticking around. What will you read after My Hero Academia? Sakamoto Days. Because I said this during one of my update videos recently. I think it was at the beginning of this month, or maybe it was sometime in April. But I want to start reading Sakamoto Days as well. But when My Hero Academia ends. Yeah, that's what I'm going to be reading next, Sakamoto Days. So, of course, I'm going to be doing, like, catch-up streams where I'm reading multiple chapters all at once until I catch up to the most recent chapter and see where we're going from there. It's not too long, though. it's at like 200 and something chapters right now, so it shouldn't take me too long to catch up to where the series is. But let me just say my too long didn't read for my review of this chapter. 10 out of 10. 100 out of 100. 1,000 out of 1,000. This is by far one of the best chapters of My Hero Academia. I thought the ones where everyone was helping out Midoriya so he could get his arms back and so he can continue fighting All For One, I thought that was amazing. But finally seeing the conclusion to the fight of that would have decided this entire war and the fate of pretty much all of humanity, this was by far one of the best chapters. But it also means that the end of My Hero Academia is within viewing distance. Like I said, this series is not going to go past June. I honestly feel like it's not going to go past June. Not unless Horikoshi takes a break after this, and then it goes all the way in there. It's going to be hard for JJK to top this chapter. Yeah, I'm going to eat my food first. Then we're going to have JJK. But out of all the chapters of My Hero, this is easily top 3. Top 5, because there's a lot of good chapters, but easy top 5. Yeah. Man. Did y'all ever think that you would read the chapter when All For One was defeated for good? Did you ever think that you would live to see the day when this chapter happened? How many years we spent with this series? 9 years for the series being active, 5 years for me covering it on this channel. That's a lot of years. 5 years, that's a lot of days. 5 years of covering this entire series. It's been nothing short of amazing, but I'll save my final thoughts for My Hero Academia as a whole for the final chapter itself. Don't know when that chapter is going to be, but I'll save my final thoughts of what I think of this entire series for that. So, I'm done. I want to see if I can get this done before I hit 50 minutes, because I really got to eat my food while it's still hot. And then we'll get started with Jujutsu Kaisen's chapter for today, but whew. What an amazing chapter, right? I'm done. I'm satisfied. I'm satisfied with this chapter. Horikoshi, out of all the mangakas I've read from, he's one that I honestly say knows how to write good stories and good characters for My Hero Academia. I don't care what anyone else says. Those people are illiterate if they think that Horikoshi is a horrible writer. But he's a phenomenal one. But I'm done. Hope y'all enjoyed. Can't wait to see you all in my next video. Like, comment, and even subscribe if you haven't already, because I am always looking forward to entertaining you. So have a fantastic day. And once again, as always, later, peoples.